Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe the show where we tell the story of people here in Clarksville, Tennessee who make this place the best place to live in America. I'm your host, Kevin Kennedy Jr., here with you for another episode, bringing you great content of people from all over our community, both natives and newcomers, business owners, community leaders, volunteers all around our community who just make this an interesting place, and we get to share their story with you, how they're making positive and impactful change all across our community. If you're just picking up with this as your first episode, great. Thanks so much for finding us. Go ahead and hit like, subscribe, whatever you can do to get notifications of upcoming episodes. But I would also encourage you, travel back to episode 1, look through the names, see if you know anybody, check out some episodes of people that you don't know, because I promise you the great content that we're bringing you today, you'll find that in some other episodes as well. I'm really excited about today's episode. It's something that I don't know a lot about. As a native to Clarksville, grow up here my whole life. As a civilian, I've lived on the outskirts of what Fort Campbell is doing in and around our community. I know a lot of soldiers, know a lot of their families. I was raised around a lot of military families, but what we're going to get to hear today is how civilians actually go on post and affect a lot of things on the day-to-day operations there at Fort Campbell. I've got someone on today's episode who's been around Clarksville for a long time, Tris Alexander Jr. We just kind of shared a little bit how we're both living in some big shadows to fill, myself as a junior and him, so we'll get into that. But he's got a great personality, smiles everywhere he goes, heard nothing but great things about him. So I'm excited to share more of his story with you today as we learn how civilians are impacting the life on Fort Campbell. Tris, appreciate it, man.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is a jam-packed day. I know we both been working. Here we are, 5:05 on a Monday.
Yep.
Worked all day and then now recording this podcast, so I appreciate it.
No problem. Here for the fun.
Yeah, man. Shout out to your family, too, for letting you be away for a little bit.
Yeah, Kendra's my girl. She's always there, and she was excited for me to do this, so I'm excited to be here.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, as we were chatting a little bit, we've got some mutual friends here and there, but you've been around Clarksville a long time.
Yes,
You said it's
sir.
basically been home since the early 90s. So tell us how you got here and give us just a little bit of run through of some of your childhood times in Clarksville.
Well, I've been here since, about 93. My dad served in the 101st Airborne Division. He was a Bradley guy, which is a tank.
Okay.
So we've been here since then. I was born in 85. I mean, like I said, I spent my whole life in Clarksville.
Yeah.
People ask me where I'm from. I was born in Fort Hood, Texas.
Right. Yeah.
But Clarksville's my home.
Yeah.
And I love this place. And growing up as a military brat is so much fun. You just get to see so much fun things. And the military, there's such a tight-knit community when you're inside of it. And, I still talk to kids today that my dad served with, like their parents.
Wow.
And they're all over the U.S. Some
Man.
are actually abroad. Still talk to them. So,
Yeah.
that just goes to show you how the military community stays close.
Yeah,
no
those
matter
connections
what.
run deep.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, now we've gotten older, we can use those, connections. We're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know somebody in Europe, that can help you out with something. So it's pretty cool. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. So it ended up eventually graduating from Clarksville High,
Yes,
went to
sir.
Austin P for a little bit, got your education, finished that up in some different places. But now the content that we're going to spend a lot of time on, you are a civilian in the Clarksville community,
Yes.
but you get to work on Fort Campbell. And this is a concept that admittedly I don't really know a lot about. So I'm really excited to hear this. Tell us a little bit high level. How are civilians engaging as employees of DOD on Fort Campbell, but not active duty military?
Gotcha. Well, the civilians on Fort Campbell, we're so just tight-knit with them. Everything we do is for the soldier, and it affects everything. I mean, I work for DPW, Director of Public Works on Fort Campbell. We're your work orders. If the building doesn't have heat, AC, our maintenance guys will go do that. We affect real property, which I deal with. I'm a facility operations specialist. So, real property is always moving all over the place. So I go inside the buildings and make sure they're being used what they're being used for. Because soldiers, I love y'all to death, but y'all be trying some tricky stuff.
All right, so hold up. All right, real property. So is that like real estate out in the civilian world, or break that down a little bit?
Real property, it's more of like it's always moving and always changing. Where real
Okay.
estate is kind of there and is what it is, almost kind of stagnant.
Okay.
With real property, like I said, we can have a building today, and we like to call them big army. The guys up at the Pentagon, they'll come down and be like, yeah, that building's an old World War II building. That's actually a project we're doing right now. is we're tearing a lot of those down where they're just not
Okay.
the code no more.
Okay.
So, which that takes a whole process, with our engineers, our contractors. I mean, you're looking at years of work before, a final approval gets done. There's nothing quick about the military and the Department of Defense. So a lot happens. So I'm basically on the ground making sure these buildings are, sustainable for our soldiers and their families. And I don't feel like a building is safe or just not being used right. It's up to us. And, master plans is the section I work in to kind of go about how we want to do things.
So you've got, what I'm hearing you say is like flexibility with different types of properties. Like it could be used for office space.
Yes.
It could be used for residential space.
Yes.
It could be used for training space
Yes.
or just warehouse space. And you're, as the needs of the military shift,
Absolutely.
you're right there kind of on the ground level advising and then following through, with all of the contractors saying, hey, this was built in the 40s
Yes.
as a bunker or something like
Yeah.
this.
Okay,
And
you'd be amazed how many we got.
really,
There's a whole block of just old World War II buildings that need to come down, and we're in
Yeah.
the process of doing that. And you talked about admin space. That is the number one requested amongst the soldiers and the civilians, because we had a bunch of civilian entities that need admin space as well.
Okay.
So like I said, there's a whole bunch of civilians that do high-level work. So fighting for admin space, that's like the Royal Rumble.
Okay.
And we're kind of, nested in the middle of
Yeah.
it. So it could be tough, but we try to prioritize. Obviously, the soldiers are our number one customer concern. So they're always going to get priority on a good space versus, the civilian or contractor side. But, everybody, they know to come see us. Usually when we walk into a building, they're like, please don't take my space since there's not enough of us.
Yeah.
So we get that often.
That's
People think
cool.
negatively of my section, like, you're coming to take our building. I'm like, nah, we're just coming to check you
it out.
Yeah, now if you're doing something wrong, we're going to take it from you.
All right, so put some leather on that for a minute. So doing something wrong, what I'm guessing, and I don't know, but I'm guessing, okay, this is supposed to be office space, and then here you go and you see paintballs on the wall or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I actually just did a building the other day where they're using it for admin space, but they want more space.
Yeah.
But they've turned 3 offices into tech rooms with like just a computer room.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, we hear you, but you got 3 offices right here. Use them better.
Okay.
So those are some of the issues we run into.
Gotcha.
Everybody wants their own office, but only, in the red, because we have a lot of Army regulations we have to follow. Only a supervisor who has locked up files could technically have an office on Fort Campbell.
Okay.
A normal peon, as we like to call them, you get put in the cubicle if
Okay.
that's see fit by your bosses. So
Yeah.
a lot of hurt feelings come when you got a GS 1112. We're like, hey, that's a nice office. Got to go. So a lot of hurt feelings, but they understand it's business at the end of the day.
How long has it taken you, and do you feel like you got a good handle on all the regs, or is you learning all the time?
Oh, the regs are constantly changing in the Army. I mean, we have about 4 or 5 that really hits home for us in the real property section with master plans. But I keep up with them pretty well. But like I said, they're constantly changing.
Gotcha.
And I feel like every year they're always adding a little something extra or tucking away a little something, which we have a little bit of influence on the regs. So, but they're constantly changing.
Yeah.
Anything with the Army, especially the military and DOD, it's always changing. It's never still.
Yeah.
Never
so
still.
For somebody that may not know, or maybe they just got here, how big is Fort Campbell? Like, because I would assume if you're dealing with property, allocation of different types of buildings, you've probably been to every corner.
Yes. I mean, Fort Campbell is huge. If you look at it on the map, it's actually funny. If you really look at it, it's shaped like a Chinook. Like anybody know, if you really look at it like a military map of what Fort Campbell is, the outline, it looks like a Chinook. So that's kind of a little funny story. But you got just in the back 40, way out in the country, as we call it, you're looking at 60,000 acres. That's just out in the country. You're not even talking about the main installation, where that's another, I'll throw a number out there, another 40 to 50,000 acres.
Wow.
Most of that's on the Kentucky side. That little post office sits on the Kentucky side, which makes it Fort Campbell, Kentucky. But actually for us in real property, they split Fort Campbell into 2 for us based on Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and there's a Fort Campbell, Tennessee.
Okay.
So it gets confusing for us because we're sitting here having to do paperwork and we have to look, all right, is this on the Kentucky side or the Tennessee side? But yeah, that's a little tidbit because a lot of people don't know
So do you also have to
that.
deal with Kentucky legislators and lawmakers and things like that?
A little bit. We work pretty closely with, Oak Grove, Hoptown, and Clarksville. We have a really good relation. The commanding general and the garrison commander, which is my big boss on the civilian side of the house, they work really close with Clarksville leadership and Hoptown leadership. So it meshes pretty good.
Yeah.
So, learned a lot of history working in master plans, too, about why that post office got put on the Kentucky side.
So what is a master plan? Like how far would you say you got a handle on something that you think is pretty high level confidence is going to happen? Like planning ahead into the future. Is this a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan?
I mean, we're looking at right now at 2032 is
Wow.
what we're currently looking at. Because, I mean, the Army, you got to project things out, and money falls in and, things like that. So we're projected out to, 2032. And, one of the things I know is coming up is another child development center, because child care is an issue. My class leadership.
You're talking about on post.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't have enough CDCs.
Yeah. Because there's a pretty big development. The IDB got into partnership with someone for several hundred spots off post.
Yeah, we talked about that in my leadership for Campbell class, which I know we'll touch on. Those spots are almost booked up already before the place is even fully built.
Yeah.
There's such a need for childcare. But talking to our big boss, Mr. Rowdy Bush, who's the deputy garrison commander, the highest ranking civilian pretty much on Fort Campbell, they're looking about 2030 before that's built. So it just goes to show you.
We're going to have 50,000 more kids by then.
Yeah, so basically it's like, when the soldiers, little kids in high school.
That's right, we'll be ready.
So, yeah. It was like, hey, appreciate that. A little late, but.
When the grandkids come along.
Exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah, so they try to project as much as possible, but, every year with the budget, we're a slave to the budget.
Sure.
And, our physical year starts on 1 October.
Okay.
But usually we won't get our budget probably set in stone till like January.
Okay.
So it's a lot of up and down.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
you get nervous when that starts to come out?
Yeah, it's no fun.
Yeah.
Is
that because you're having hard conversations of saying, hey, I know we thought this was going to happen, but it looks like it's not going to happen this
We've
year?
had a lot of those conversations, and it's like, hey, we just don't have the money, or something got allocated because something happened up in D.C., which is totally out of our control.
Right.
There's nobody to blame on Fort Campbell per se, because we just do what they tell us.
Right.
But that happens often where a lot of projects get pulled. I've seen many projects be developed for 5 years, 6 years, and all of a sudden, sorry, no money, so we're going to pull it. No time we'll get back to it.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. See, that's a world as a civilian. I've never had any experience working there. And I not working in government either, but it sounds like something as you're dealing with big government entities that I could reasonably see that happening.
Oh, for sure. Often. It's fun, though. I enjoy the job because it's a constant challenge. And it's a moving part every day. Every day is a little bit something new, which I truly enjoy.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a DOD civilian, you have to be able to adapt because every day is changing. No matter what job you do, you could be a janitor and it's still something.
Sure.
It's always something. From a GS3 to a GS11, 13.
Yeah.
You're an important part, and there's always something changing for you. So for sure.
Well, you mentioned it. So like getting into the field, we briefly touched on it as I was doing your intro, but both of us have junior, right?
Sir.
You said your dad's been around Fort Campbell. Obviously, he was active duty for a long time, but he's inching up on a really big date. You were telling me before the show started. So tell us a little bit about him and what he's done over his entire career, and then lead that into why is that something that maybe you aspired to as far as pursuing a career doing what you're doing now?
Well, my dad's my hero. He truly is. He served this nation. He gave a lot for this country. He tells me all the time, especially with my kids, he missed being around for me. So he's kind of making up for it now as a grandpa, which is really fun for me to see. But obviously, as a grown man, I understand the sacrifice he made, and I don't hold nothing against him. But he's been the labor relations guy at Fort Campbell for, 15, 16 years. He actually went away for a little bit a few years ago to work at D.C.
Oh, wow.
But he came back to Fort Campbell for the last year. And,
okay.
he's going to be retiring July 31st. Finally, he's ready.
Yeah.
He's ready. But his footsteps is a big one. You know how it is. Me and you talk, having big footsteps to fill as a junior as someone who's prominent in Clarksville in their field. So, every time I introduce myself, I'm like, I'm junior.
Yeah.
I was like, I just want to make sure.
Do you know the other guy? Like, yeah, I kind of do.
Yeah. When I used to just introduce myself as just Tris Alexander, they start asking me these labor related. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. No.
Well, I'm a smart guy, but I ain't that smart of a guy.
I didn't send that email.
Yeah, for sure. And but when he got out of the Army, he actually he wanted a better life for us because they didn't really get paid a lot. As soldiers still don't get paid enough, especially back then. Which hopefully we fix that one day. He would go to night school and stock shelves at Walmart during the day when he got out of the Army. and for 4 years, but he worked hard. He comes from Los Angeles. He grew up in South Central LA.
Wow.
And, all you want to do is be a good father and provide. And I remember those years, and when he finally graduated, got a job with the government, he just ran with it. He kept getting promoted. And next thing you know, he's the chief of labor and relations. So he's done everything right, to show me how a family's supposed to be led, handle your business. And like I said, he's my hero. I absolutely love my dad. And it's big shoes. Even though him retiring, that name is still going to echo.
Sure, absolutely.
But hopefully I'm making him proud. Doing my own thing. And
well, and I'm sure you're like me. You're like that. You realize it's a blessing. It's also a responsibility.
Absolutely.
Because
Huge
we're not going to waste the goodwill that they. You said your dad was stocking shelves, going to school. My dad was catching rides with people to go to law school at night after substitute teaching during the day in CMCSS when he was, in his 20s. And, I remember my dad, he'd work all day doing law stuff, come home, there'd be 2 or 3 people in the driveway. He's selling horses. Then, we'd eat dinner and he's going out to check on a rental house. Like, that generation, they're hustlers, they're movers,
I'm sure you worked hard. I've worked hard, but we still can't got no grind compared to what our dads had. Like it was just another level of kind of grind they came up in.
And generally speaking, I think they get to a stage of life too where they've realized all of the blessings that they were able to provide for us did come at a cost of time. Yeah. And whereas I've not really felt the drive from my dad to do more. When he sees me get to spend a lot of time with my kids, probably at the cost of maybe some career pursuits, he said to me, like, it's cool that you get to be around so much. And I'm sure, for you too, it's 100%. Like
100%.
Picking your kids up from dance, being able to make a program here or there, being with them at their soccer games, So I was joking with somebody the other day. I said, I think my dad watched me on a weed eater more than he watched me play baseball, that was his deal, running farms and a law office and rental houses and all this stuff. He was just hustling the best he could.
So their grind is unmatched. Like I'll never match my dad when it comes to grind. Like I work hard, but it's just another level back then. Yeah. Well,
that's what a blessing. I hope I get to meet your dad someday. Nice. Happy retirement to you, sir. If you're listening, thank you for all you've done for our country. But we touched a little bit about Leadership Fort Campbell. And so one of our previous episodes, we had the new director of Leadership Clarksville, Yolanda Williams. She told us all about that program. Leadership Fort Campbell is a kind of different entity. Yes. You've got some recent experience with this, so tell us about what that's like and what does the program entail for people who are involved in it.
Well, the program is ran by Scott Galbraith on Fort Campbell. He's the chief of he's the chief of training integration on Fort Campbell. So he runs it's a 6-week course, not all together, like 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. And what we do is we learn what's called the ADM, the Army Design Method, of how to take care of complex situations while still leading a group. Okay. And every year the deputy garrison commander gives initiative. What does he want that class to tackle? And ours this year for my class is how can we evolve Fort Campbell into a more healthy community. And that was a lot of work. And we do what's called a binning, which that is me and my classmates, there was 27 of us. We sit down, we come up with ideas and put sticky notes on the board of things we would like to see where it pertains to mental health or how gyms are done, the eating options on Fort Campbell. Then we take all those, we break down in different groups, and we get tasked of, okay, let's come up with questions that we would like to have for ourselves because we have to do the research. Yeah. We're doing real research papers, college style. And there are some people in there that's a little nervous having done. Yeah. I mean, I haven't done a college style paper in a long time. No. Yeah. So I'm sitting here like, all right,
here we go.
Yeah, I got to brush up.
Paragraph, tab. How do I do this again? Format.
Yeah. Man, I'm
give me that double space.
It was nice to go back in the time machine there on that one. But so we get these, these questions, then we do the research, then we sit in front of the class, we go over what we found, then we basically break it down into 3 scenarios. You have the current environment, you have the problem space, and then you have I can't remember what the last group was called. Basically, we would like to see happen in the future, or the idea space. So, and I was in the current environment, like, what's in the current environment going on right now, and what are some suggestions to prove it? or to improve on it. So then it will go over the problem space,
Yeah.
like here's the issues, and kind of just break it down by each section of what the issue is.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that we found on Fort Campbell, especially amongst the civilian side, is communication is a big issue. There's a lot of information out there on the intranet that we use on Fort Campbell, but it's hard to find. So one of our biggest things is try to get it all in one area, kind of the rendezvous with wellness is what we came up with, just a one-stop shop for your holistic health, your mental health, which is a huge one. Mental health is one of the biggest ones that me personally, I'm a big part of, and just things like that.
So who's in the class? You said 27 classmates.
Yeah.
Who were that made up of?
You have to submit an application around October.
Okay.
And there's from different directorates. You have, I can't think how many directorates off the top of my head, but you got DPW, DPTMS, DHS, DHR. I know you're like, that's a lot of
a lot of acronyms.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, welcome to the Army.
Yeah.
The acronyms.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. And so you put an application. It's a pretty rigorous selection. And they go through and just try to pick, because your supervisor has to write an essay on why they think you'd be a good leader, a good fit for this class. I tried for 6 years, and I finally, which was a blessing in disguise, because I love my class. A lot of good friends have come out of that.
But super competitive.
Yeah, it is super competitive.
Yeah.
It's the only installation in the Army that does this class.
Wow.
A civilian leadership class. That's it. This is the only one on Fort Campbell. So it is a pretty big deal. I mean, they know about this class in the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that get implemented during this class come from us because it's real time. Our deputy garrison commander, who we briefed these ideas to, he's like, okay, I got $1 million in QSR funds, another acronym, and let's see what we can do with it. You got $1 million. What can you do? So, and it's just different people from different walks of life coming together to come up with great ideas because we all have the same goal. No matter where you come from, we want to see quality on Fort Campbell for soldiers, families, and civilians. How can we work to get there? So it's basically a big brain trust of talented people on the installation. They do it every year. They get a new problem statement every year. And it's just a wonderful thing because you also learn how to work with different people.
Yeah,
That's the beautiful thing of the class. The biggest slogan that Mr. Galbraith has is trust the process.
Okay.
And based on what you kind of hear it over and over, you get a little tired of it.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, you find out what it means. Trust the process. Trust yourself and what you believe in. That's what it's about. Trust yourself. You're the process.
Yeah.
Trust what you believe in. Fight for what you believe in. So that's what that entails.
Yeah.
You get a bunch of talented people together to brainstorm on how can we make this installation better. And you just learn to work with different people. There's some difficult people out there.
Sure.
And you learn to work with them.
Are those people who are civilians in the class, are most of them Clarksville natives, or did they move here for this job?
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
It is truly a mixed bag. You got some who are, retired Army. You got some that are pure civilians.
Yeah.
So that right there makes for an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Anybody who's worked on Fort Campbell who hasn't served in the military and you work with the military, it's a different dynamic because you just tend to view things differently. Now, I'm fortunate enough I've been around the Army since I was literally born.
Yep.
So I understand the lingo. I know how to carry myself among soldiers, even though I never served. Because you do got to carry you got to know how to talk the talk and walk the walk.
I don't have it.
Yeah, these soldiers, they'll point you out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, because, we're briefing generals, colonels, high-level people, and I've seen the colonels see a civilian briefing, like, you got 5 minutes, and they'll be sitting there briefing. Nope, not getting enough, get on my face. You got to be able to handle it.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's, we're lucky as a community to have someone like you with your life experience be able to step into that. You've obviously got a lot of talent and getting into leadership for Campbell, bringing about some change. I know you brought up the mental health initiatives was something that you're really passionate about. How do you feel like Clarksville as a community is supporting the mental health of soldiers and families? Or is it something that you feel like, your efforts are really just trying to improve what's being done on Fort Campbell?
Fort Campbell does a pretty good job. I mean, unfortunately, on Fort Campbell, there's a lot. It's one of the highest suicide rates for soldiers. Unfortunately, one is too many. But Fort Campbell's always kind of had a high number in that.
And you feel like that's because of the types of jobs that they do for the military?
I mean, Fort Campbell's one of the biggest, is one of the heavy hitters in the Army. When it's time to go to war, you call them the 101st.
Yeah.
Especially, around 2009, 2012, where unfortunately the suicide numbers were at its highest in the Army. You know, they were coming back from 3-4 deployments, basically back to back to back. So, you know, it's hard being a soldier, especially in the 101st, because you're going to get called to duty.
Yeah.
Because we're one of the big heavy hitters, and when the Pentagon needs to get things done, you know, they call the 101st.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of resources out. That's one thing, the beautiful thing of Alicia Fort Campbell, we got to dig into these resources with it. We just didn't know we're there because communication is just lacking. The resources are lacking to get that out there. You know, there's I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's across from the VA office here in Clarksville. They deal specifically with families as a whole, like counseling and dealing with children who are having mental health issues with the parent being gone. Because, you know, that's one thing, you know, I can speak from myself as a military child, is it's hard for your parent to be gone.
Sure.
Now, kids are lucky now because they have Skype and Teams and Zoom, and that's wonderful that they get to talk to their parents, you know, if they're deployed. Because I remember, you know, unfortunately, I remember my mom being on the phone talking to my dad maybe once a month on a static phone, you know, like, you know,
cord plugged in the wall.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So that's an awesome thing they can still,
see
exactly.
and feel.
And that's so awesome. I love that. But still, it's hard on the military, you know, military spouses. Y'all the real MVPs. Don't let nobody ever tell you different.
I mean, I'll tell you 100%. We had one today who was supposed to have, you know, two kids come in at 9 a.m. She called first thing we're open. She said, my husband just left last night unannounced.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, well, wow.
Yeah, it can happen.
Just the rhythms of some of our families that, you know, civilians we don't know.
Absolutely.
You know, he just got called out and was gone last night.
Military spouses are special. And obviously my mother being a military spouse, it's near and dear to my heart. You know, it's tough. It's tough on families. But there's a lot of great resources here in Clarksville, a lot of great resources out there. You just have a hard time getting them out.
Sure.
And for people to know it's there. You know, a lot of people, you know, don't think they have help or there's just nothing there for them. No, it's here, you know. And that's kind of one of the initiatives we came out with is kind of have like a mental health ambassador for each like unit, company, and even on the civilian side, because, I mean, we still have our mental issues too. You know, someone to kind of go to if you're having a mental issue, and they can give you the resources as well as, you know, us making a website to go where you need to go. Yeah. So we're just, you know, we're trying to help people. That's the beauty of the classes. Like I said, we're all here for one thing. We want to help soldiers first, and, you know, anybody else in this community. So
yeah.
It's a beautiful
thing. That's awesome, man. I appreciate you bringing the content to the show. It's been something that I've been really excited to learn more about myself. I know our listeners and, you know, the people who catch us at times will find that really valuable. But you know, true to, you know, who you are, been here forever, you're still a Clarksvillian.
Yes,
you're
sir.
still a civilian, you know, out in the community. Your family's doing lots of things. You know, you got kids at home, going to schools and things like that. What are some things about Clarksville that, you know, you're excited about that are, you know, on our horizon or that you guys are doing on a regular basis?
I just love the way Clarksville is kind of opening up its mind a little bit. You know, leaders are getting in place that are a little more forward thinking. And don't get me wrong, sometimes if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sure. I get that, but sometimes we need to progress. And, you know, the F&M Bank Arena, that's awesome. Like, that's awesome for Clarksville. It's going to bring so many opportunity jobs. You got Google, LG, all these things that are coming to Clarksville because it's a great place to live. You know, I know you've said it a million times. I love Clarksville. It's the greatest melting pot in America because you have the military, you have Austin P. I mean, Hoptown is basically Clarksville light. you know. So like, it's just a very unique thing with Fort Campbell being right there on the border. That all these entities have to work together and continue to grow. And like I said, Clarksville, just the melting pot that it is, it's awesome, and just so many things coming up. And I just love it. I do want to see more things for family, so we need to get some more things.
I was going to ask you that. What's some things that your family does now that you enjoy together?
Well, we travel a lot as much as we can. We actually just came back from a nice 10-day vacation. We were down in Disney, then we went to Siesta Key Beach. Disney, boy. We took them last year for a week, and that was tiring. So then we took them to Magic Kingdom for a day this time. Did almost 12 miles in one day. Towards the end of it, they were like, hey, carry me. I was like, look, I'm barely making it. I'm barely making it myself. I can't carry you. I'm sorry, baby girl.
It's time to tough it up.
So,
especially in July, man. That's rough.
Yeah.
How old is this one?
My daughter's 8. My son is 6.
Yeah, so you're right there at the same age as mine. That 6 years, I want to be carried.
I'm like, nah, I can't even do it.
No.
I'm like, nah, you're going to be taller than me in like 5 minutes. So I
might can carry you to the bathroom. But beyond that, you know, this park is way too big to be carried around.
Woo-wee. It was cooking. But yeah, there's a lot of things we like to do around Clarksville. My daughter is in dance right now.
Okay.
Hopefully doing competitive dance soon. My son is a baseball fanatic, so we're getting
Okay.
ready for baseball season to come up. And we just try to take advantage of every little kind of event that's in Clarksville that's kid friendly.
Yeah.
And try to do things that are different culture, because I'm really big on showing my kids different culture.
Sure.
I think, as a Clarksvillian, if we get tied up in that small town mentality, even though Clarksville is technically not a small town anymore.
Yeah.
We left that a long time ago.
That's
Clarksville's
right.
a small town.
Yeah.
But you can still have that small town mentality for us who've been around for a while. So I like that it's growing and become more family friendly events. And Fort Campbell does a lot of those family friendly events too. And they're working on a couple things to get more the outside community involved to kind of see, what we do on Fort Campbell. So
Yeah, that's cool.
exciting.
What's your family spot to eat dinner? Where?
Oh,
Don't besides Chick-fil-A.
But
Yeah.
well, my kids love tacos.
Okay.
So as long as it has tacos, they're happy.
They're
tacos
happy.
or pizza. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, me and my wife, we love Black Horse. I'm
Yeah.
really good friends with Jeff Robinson, and like I said, we love Black Horse. We'll go to Black. Anytime we kind of have like a date night or something, just me and her. All these places to go. Like, let's go to Black Horse.
You remember a place from your childhood that you would go that's not around anymore?
Oh man.
I know it's a hard question sometimes.
That is a hard question.
Yeah.
I really got to do some digging in my head there. I miss Charlie Steakhouse over there on the.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you mine. It just brought up Buffalo Brady's. You remember that place on Riverside Drive?
Yeah.
So we would go play baseball or whatever. And I just remember going, and I don't know why we were all the way down on Riverside Drive in our baseball uniforms. But, it's like my baseball team, St. B All-Stars. It's like I have these vivid memories wearing our red jerseys going into Buffalo Brady's, like playing pool and, just some good times down
that's
there.
awesome. The one that comes to mind, it just popped in my head, because when we first moved to Clarksville, we lived on the north side of town, kind of off Fort Campbell Boulevard.
Yeah.
And you might not remember, it was an old restaurant. It was called Susie Q Burgers. And they were like 15-cent burgers, 25% fried. And it's more of a nostalgia thing for me, because it's from my dad. He was like, we're finna go here and get these.
Yeah.
Especially, he wasn't making a lot of money at the time.
Right, yeah.
So he would get like 10 burgers, 6 fries.
Yeah.
I mean, just all the stuff that, it's going to make me good and fat like I am today. So that's more of a nostalgia thing. I don't know. I can't remember if they're any good. Probably if I ate one right now, I'd be like, yeah, this is gross.
Yeah. Why did you feed us this all the time?
Yeah, but every time I drive past on Fort Campbell Boulevard when I'm going to work, I look where it used to be. It's like a car dealership there now. And I chuckle sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just fun. It's like, man, 50-cent burgers. Like, today's? Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, it's fun to reminisce about the old times, because we're about the same age. Kind of went to high school around the same time. I went to Rossview, you went to Clarksville High, but
go Cats.
Well, we've lived long enough. It don't matter anymore. It is fun to go. Have you been to a Rossview Clarksville game since you've graduated?
I've been to a couple. Funny story. Actually, 2003. Clarksville High and Rossview played the first time in the regular season, and that was my senior year.
Okay.
In which we won.
Who'd you play with? Who was on that 03 team?
The 03 team. She had Jared Sneed, who's currently at Kenwood.
Hey, shout out Jared Sneed.
Yeah, shout out my boy,
I
man.
saw him at a event. What was that? It was for a sorority, and it was one of the most amazing events. His daughter was a participant in the program, and they had a big deal. It was
Girl
amazing.
Dad for real.
Yeah, shout out Jared, Kenwood Knights. I was like, man, you're head coach.
Yeah,
well, how are we old enough to be a head coach of high school? But yeah, Jared Sneed was on that team.
Kim was lucky to have him. Those young men are lucky to have Jared.
Absolutely,
yes,
good dude.
100%.
So you played with Matthew Griffith was on your team.
Yeah, Matthew Griffith, that's my linebacker. Yeah,
linebacker. Who played quarterback on that team?
Oh man, I think my junior year, I think it was Matthew. Yeah, well, it was Ricky Stafford.
Okay,
and he got hurt. Then Matthew took over. Then my senior year was Wesley Fink.
Wes Fink.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah. I've been to a couple games.
Was Lanus around that time?
Lanus was a year under me. So,
okay.
Yeah, Lanus is a trip.
He's a stud, man.
That's my guy.
And his older brother,
Tario.
Yeah. That's who I remember.
Yeah, that's one of the most exciting players I ever watched live. When I tell people, I'm like,
that dude was bad.
Yes.
Yeah, he was
one of the most wicked first steps I ever saw.
Yeah, I kind of remember, watching from the stands. I didn't play football, but, I remember the Frederick name. And, of course, I knew some Clarksville High kids just because we grew up together playing baseball, basketball, whatnot. But, man, watching him play was just like, wow.
No, he was electric for sure. Him and Mario Merriweather, he was a couple years ahead of me playing running back. And
I saw Mario Merriweather. I was in the Clarksville High stands. I don't know what I was doing over there. but he ran up the right sideline against somebody and did one of these like kind of hesitated as he was running towards the end zone. It's just like two defenders there, like hesitated like he was going to cut back towards the middle, and then it was like a half second he was in the end zone, like 20 yards down the field. Like it was one of the most unbelievable juke out of your shoes plays that I'd ever seen real live in person.
No, Mario was a special talent, man. Yeah. He was such a special talent. And also my senior year class was Chris Fletcher, who's the Austin P leading rusher. That's my guy. Put him in Austin P Hall of Fame. Come on now.
Yeah.
It's a good buddy of mine, which he's coaching football as well. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
On our Rossview side, running back then was Trey Trotter. Did you ever remember Trey?
Yeah, I remember Trey.
You probably tried to tackle him.
Yeah, a little bit. It was mostly Jared, the fullback.
That's right.
He brought the load. I was like, we used to always joke every time we would tackle him. He was like, "Yeah, I got you." I'm like, "Yeah, you got me. That's cool though, but I got you too."
Isn't it funny, man? You feel like you're telling the stories that just happened, a few years ago. And then you realize it's been 20.
Yeah, my 20-year reunion's coming up, and I'm like, man, that's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Like, somebody's lying.
Yeah, how do you even tell your kids it goes that fast?
Oh, they just laugh because it's funny. Yeah. My daughter's class is class of 2034. Okay. And I joked to my wife, she graduated in 2004 as well.
Okay.
I was like, that's going to be 30 years after we graduated.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're actually zoned for Rossview. So my wife makes fun of me all the time. She's like, how do you feel the kids are going to be Hawks? I'm like,
Well, around here, you never know. There's Kirkwood. They probably have, a second school on Rossview. They'll have Basham High School or something like that.
I'm only 2 miles away from the Rossview campus, so I'd be surprised if I get rezoned.
You'd be surprised, but who knows?
Yeah.
I'm the kid that grew up here, and I went to 7 schools and never moved a house.
Oh, that's amazing.
3 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools.
Sheesh.
Never moved.
That's amazing.
I know. First time I was at a school for 4 years in a row was dental school.
That's fantastic. My first time was high school.
Yeah.
But man, like you got me beat. You didn't go nowhere.
And all my friends, we just moved from school to school to school. I went to Northeast Elementary. I went to Burt. Then I went to St. B Elementary. Then I went to Northeast and Rossview Middle. And I went to Northeast and Rossview High.
Sheesh, you got around.
All over,
way you know everybody.
I know. That's one of the ways. Yeah, and then everybody thinks I'm my dad. So.
Hey, man, I know the pain.
You know the thing. Well, hey, man, this has been a real fun episode. I'm glad to make the connection, to hear your story. Thank you for bringing the content to our audience about how civilians, whether they're military kids like yourself that grew up and then chose to call this a career, maybe they were coming out of the military and got on the civilian side of things, but really making a positive difference on Fort Campbell. It sounds like the programs that you have, things like Leadership Fort Campbell, but then also just the day-to-day initiatives of trying to provide the best opportunities for soldiers, for their families, for anyone involved at Fort Campbell. We're really lucky to have you doing that, so thanks for telling us more about those programs.
Thank you.
If you see Tris out in the streets,